第二现代社会学哈。那我们有请这个韩教授 ，Welcome， Professor Han， please。
Well, thank you very much for kind introduction of myself. I am from Seoul National University. I am sociologist. I studied in the United States. I got my PhD dissertation on Michel Foucault and Jürgen Habermas. That's my starting point. Well, let me first of all express my deep gratitude and appreciation to Professor Yang Jia, who invited me to this wonderful occasion. Well, this morning, many speakers talked about Chinese way of modernization, many difficulties, many issues. And also, let me change my eyeglasses here. Secretary of the Communist Party, Zhejiang Gongsheng University, Yu Jianxing, his talk was very thoughtful in my view, but he mentioned together with Zhao Qingyang, Professor Jürgen Habermas, and whom I know very well. And Habermas' idea of unfinished modernity has something to do with what I'm going to make a presentation. Can I go to the first page? The first page, please. Okay, what I call reflexive modernity has something to do with what Habermas called unfinished modernity. Okay? That I'm calling forward, reflexive modernity. So I'm making presentation about this. And also this morning we talked, many scholars talked about the relation between tradition and modernity. Okay? Particularly just before, Professor Chao Kang also mentioned emotional bomb, emotional bomb. It's a very interesting concept out of East Asian cultural tradition. I think it has something to do with what I'm going to make a presentation this afternoon here. Yeah. Okay. Well, as you can see, my topic consists of three key words. One is Confucianism, and the other one is reflexive modernity, and also third one is second modern transformation. This second modern transformation, or reflexive modernity, is, in my view, is going on everywhere. In China, in Korea, in Japan, not only East Asia, but in most of the countries, Europe, United States, wherever we go, we see this reflexive modernization or second modernity is going on. Many scholars in China talk about Chinese way of modernization. That is a very specific characteristic, But we can say reflexive modernity or second modernization is already going on everywhere. That's my basic thesis that I'm going to develop. Do you hear me very well?
Yeah.
Is it good translated? Thank you so much. Okay. All right. See here. Oh, it's that. Here. Okay. Now, this is basic scheme. What is very important for me is that modernization brings about many very beautiful things, bright aspects. Industrial product, well-being, and many other things, you know. But at the same time, the real problem is this modernization, or very rapid process of industrialization, produce unintended bad consequences, what I call self-destructive consequences. That is what we call risk society, global risk society. So therefore, the question is not simply going on the process of modernization, but really what we confront today is how to deal with this complex global risk society, how we can get over these unintended consequences of modernization. And therefore, as you can see here, we started from industrial society on the left side, but it was not intended. We didn't want it to produce, but somehow it happened that this very rapid process of industrialization, not only in West, but also in East Asia, China, Korea, the same, produced risk society. So therefore, the real question confronting us is what kind of strategy we need in order to go beyond this risk society. And many people here talked about, emotional bomb. And what I'm thinking is Confucianism, not in the traditional way, but in a very reflexive way. This Confucianism provided good energy for us to think about how we should go beyond this risk society, because risk society threatens our life, It poses a lot of danger, threat, risk to our survival, to our safety of our citizens' life. Therefore, Confucianism, which provides humanity-oriented philosophy, it is a kind of good sources, philosophical or cultural sources, which could be used to provide good energy, emotional as well as kind of motivational energy to go beyond the risk society. Sorry. Okay. So where does East Asia stand? As you can see, the background, of course, economic success, no doubt, and profound cultural tradition. Many people talked already. We have a very profound cultural tradition. Chao Kang already mentioned, our East Asian ethical culture have something to do with innovation of business activities here. So anyway, we have very profound, cultural tradition. And also, we are very conscious of our future. We ask whether we should just follow the Western world. In the past, somehow we believe that we have to catch up modernization. Obviously, United States or Western Europe, they went further. They started further. So we followed it. So catch up modernization is a very important topic. But nowadays, we think we are in about the same stage. So we need to compete with the United States or the Western Europe. And then, what will be our future? Where we see the main energy which drives us to go beyond risk society or just modernization toward what we may call reflexive modernity or reflexive modernization. I think my central claim is that we need not just a traditional Confucianism, we need a reflexive Confucianism. Reflexive Confucianism means that we are aware of danger, difficulties, problems that have been produced as an unintended consequences of rapid modernization that we have been taking so far. China is no exemption in my view, There's a whole bunch of risks. So people can talk about the emotional bomb may explode sometime. Where that bomb come from? There must be some kind of a cultural reason, cultural sources and energy which provide the people, angry, frustration, deep energy. No, we don't like this kind of harsh, riskful reality at all. We want to go beyond that, and where we should go. And that Confucianism, reflexive Confucianism, could provide us good direction to move and energy, for that. That is what I am doing, this day. Thank you. Okay, and then next. The key word of explanation. I think it's a very difficult concept, so I skim avoid. The 4 dimensions of reflexive. I am putting emphasis of the reflexive, So what does it mean, reflexive? Okay. Pay attention not only to the intended, but also unintended consequences of action. That is very important. Okay? Second, being aware of the mediation between knowledge and risk. What we call risk is not simply over there. Risk is culturally produced, So some people are very sensitive to risk because of this cultural sensitivity. Some people do not have that kind of sensitivity. That depends on the culture. But we are living in the risk society, but if we don't have any sensitivity to it, it is a really dangerous phenomenon because we have to develop sensitivity to go beyond that, Yeah. And third, get out the trap of pessimistic determinism. So there are a full bunch of risk. There are many types of risk. Climate change, of course, in economic polarization, financial crisis, and there are all kinds of massive, accidents, fire, traffic accidents. There are so many risks, there, which threaten our life. And if we only talk about this risk we face, that is more or less passive. That risk should be managed. So management of risk is equally important as production of risk, So, okay. And then search for a new alternative model of development. That is what I call reflexive modernity or second modernity. Post-Confucian approach. So my approach to Confucianism is not simply traditional, but post-Confucianism, which means actually reflexive Confucianism. Reflexive Confucianism, again and again, means that we are aware of the self-destructive, very dangerous, unintended by consequences of modernization that we have been taking. That is our reality. And Chinese government also has already recognized it. In 2012, Chinese government announced Qi as a new way of governing, social governance system, which means that state alone cannot do that. Society must cooperate in order to overcome this whole complex of risk, So this is what China has already done. So what I'm talking here, we need a post-Confucian approach rather than just the traditional type of Confucianism. Okay, this is the East Asian pathway. So we are starting from this PA development and complex risk society and the post-Confucian reflexive modernization. And in that process, somehow I assume that Confucianism would play a very significant role in transforming the risk society toward a post kind of reflexive second modern development. This is the general theme that I have been developing. Of course, in relation to some of the Western scholars, like Woollich and Habermas. So it looks more complex. This is a whole picture. Okay? So we started here, modernization, and then reflexive modernization. And because of this reflexive modernization, many institutions have changed from the modernization period to second modernization period. For example, state is of course important, but nowadays global governance is equally important. Not only national state, but global governance is very important. Market economy is of course important, but nowadays global economy is of course more important. Power politics was important, but nowadays life politics is more important sometimes. Citizenship is important, but today human rights as a universal value that's more important. Mass media played a very important role in the process of modernization, but nowadays new media, SNS, all kind of things, new digital technology play very important. Representative democracy was very dominant, but nowadays people are talking about participatory democracy. Okay? Nuclear family was firmly established in modernity, but nowadays diversified, family. There are all kinds of different families, Single family, man and man married together, woman and woman married together, they got family. So there are all kinds of new variations of the family, which was never possible in the period of modernity. But nowadays we are living in a different stage of development. So all kinds of families are coexisting actually. This is the basic scheme of social change. So my presentation suggests we are moving, for example, first modernity to second modernity. Okay? And in this process, what we see is reflexive modernization and the principle of modernization. Principles of modernity, that is a bit a difficult concept, but anyway, the radicalization of the principles of modernity work as a fundamental driving forces. Just I can take many examples of this. For example, love. Okay, love. In traditional society or in modern society, we love each other and we got married, but we sustain, family because we have to take care of our children, right? Your children is grown up, so we have to take care of it. But this day, actually, my love is lost. I don't love you anymore. I don't care anything. So people just got divorced, Family, okay? Family can be easily divorced. In the past, we paid a lot of attention to the emotional care to the children, but nowadays, my life is more important than children. More than anything else. So this radical individualization, the radicalization of the love is going on everywhere. This is, I think, what we may observe in East Asia too. So anyway, we are, again, my thesis is that we are moving from the first modernity to, the second modernity. And in this transformation, there may appear many ruptures, but somehow second modernity means more advanced stage of development, which means that we can solve many problems we were unable to solve in the before. This is the kind of historical paradigm of change. All right, okay. This is about the same thing that we have had already discussed. The first time the historical change is change from traditional society to the first modernity, and we can see instrumental rationality increased very sharply, widely, and scientific technological progress has happened, and the rapid urbanization has happened. So there are all kinds of variation, European style, East Asian style, Latin American style, whatever, Islamic style. There could be many, many styles, but somehow we are in that process of transformation from traditional society to modernization. And what is the relation between tradition and modernization? This topic has already been discussed this morning, actually. The idea of modernity somehow presupposes rupture, discontinuity, conflict between tradition and modernity, because tradition was somehow supposed to be a kind of barrier, obstacle to development. But nowadays, in the age of reflexive modernization, we have to reinvent the tradition in a new way to get the emotional or moral resources to go beyond the risk society we face this day. Therefore, what is the tradition? What the role of Confucianism can do? That question is more important today than in the past. So, how we can appropriate Confucianism or tradition? I feel that there are three different ways. One is very instrumental, traditional way, very hierarchical, very patriarchal, very authoritarian, maybe top-down development. That is one possibility, of course. Neo-Confucianism, that is revitalizing Confucianism in terms of, for example, capitalist economy, okay? Capitalist state, Confucian capitalist state, something like that. But in my view, most important and promising type of Confucianism or reappropriating Confucianism is post-Confucian development. That is very self-constructed, self-critical, reconstructing humanity-centered normative trend. I don't know whether you follow me. I will show you how we can decompose Confucianism into two elements. All right, okay, so that is one example. Lee Kuan-yew, the Singapore, represents very authoritarian, top-down model of reappropriation of Confucianism, whereas Kim Dae-jung, the former president of South Korea, he shows a more reflexive, a more democratic way to reconsider Confucianism. That is very contrasting development of these two political figures in East Asia. Okay, but I will skip over that. Now, this is a kind of image of social change. The first model is kind of linear model, okay, step-by-step model, okay? We used to think about that, but it is not true anymore. It is not correct at all. Really, the historical change is kind of a circular movement, okay? It is a kind of circular movement. So always, tradition works with the modernity, tradition works with the post-modernity, whatever, So we have to think about how tradition is deeply related to historical change, which call either modernization or reflexive modernization or second modernization. So our understanding of historical change should be changed from this linear step-by-step model to this kind of circular type of model. And I was deeply impressed by so many scholars this morning touched about this relationship between tradition and modernity this time. All right, so how we can explain the complexity of risk encountered by East Asia in terms of empirical research? So I will show you very shortly about empirical research. Okay. Yeah. Empirical study, actually I worked with Professor Yi Chang, Chiang University, who unfortunately passed away last year. I worked with him for a long time. We had the survey data in China and Korea and Japan. And for example, it shows only the result in Korea. So this family, the risk may be classified into six categories. One is family risk, the other one is health risk. So there's environmental risk, okay, and the violence risk, and accident security risk, and economic risk. So there are 6 types of risk, and we will show you how people understand or perceive this risk here. Now, as you can see here, the dark line is the present time, and then dot is after 10 years, and with the other one is before 10. So, for example, on the right side, the dot means after 10 years. After 10 years, no, let me see. Before 10 years, the dot, what is it? Like, okay, here. Can you see that? Can you see here? Okay, anyway. I don't know. So after 10 years, for example, after 10 years it will be more serious than today or 10 years ago. It shows that people see how this different type of risk is changing as time goes by. So that's kind of a very dynamic perception of the risk that people show. And we compare that kind of risk perception in China and Korea and Japan. Yeah. Okay, and also I consider two layers of Confucianism. One is hierarchical, authoritarian trait. The other one is humanity-oriented, cosmopolitan trait. So the first type, for example, loyalty, trinity of a ruler, father, and teacher, and the priority of the first son, ancestor worship, that may belong to hierarchical authoritarian trait. And also people-centered development, the middle, in between way, 중용, human cultivation, and then man as a heaven, that may belong to humanity-oriented cosmopolitan trait. And the question is, how social group accept which element more actively? That is kind of empirical question is here. So here are two lines. H means humanity-oriented component. A means authoritarian component. As you can see, young people, they don't like A, the authority-oriented development, while the old people, they like it. As in the same way, the young people, they don't like authoritarian development, but young people, old people, young people like humanitarian. So anyway, that shows very clear-cut kind of differences of the reception by social groups of those components of the Confucianism. That is empirical kind of study. This is also another empirical study. This hierarchical orientation, young people do not like this hierarchical orientation, but old people, they like relatively the authoritarian component. So what's the outcome of data analysis? The controversial trait rejected. Okay, the authoritarian kind of Confucian element rejected. Yeah. Hierarchical authoritarian power structure, that's rejected. But humanity-oriented trait, generally supported by younger generation. This is what we found from East Asian empirical research. So, what does it mean? So we are very changing in terms of how we think of Confucianism, the meaning of Confucianism. Confucianism is also has a different meaning to young people and older people. Young people would like to see Confucianism from the point of view, more humanity-oriented kind of perception, whereas old people see Confucianism from the perspective more kind of hierarchical, more authoritarian perspective. That means this Confucianism is in the process of reconstruction society, so socially. And then furthermore, the worldview as binary opposition, that was a very prevailing worldview in the world, but this worldview as a binary opposition is now changing toward a kind of in-between common world. I'm not so sure whether you would understand very well what I mean by in-between common world. So we are living in between world, common world. So what we need to do is to recover and construct and develop further what we already shared in the position of in between. There's a two camp, there's a progressive camp, conservative camp, old people, young people, maybe United States, China, in Korea, South Korea, North Korea. So there are two camps. But we are very much interested in finding out in between common world so that we can live together peacefully, okay? This is what we really want. And we found that that kind of change has been taking place in East Asia in a very interesting way. So, my conclusion is second modernity is now under construction. Okay? So dynamic balance between individual freedom. We need individual freedom, but we also need common good. Science and morality should go together. Sorry. Conclusion. Second modern transformation that is undergoing now here. So we are very much looking forward what will happen from now on in terms of historical transformation from a simple kind to second modern modernization, not only in Europe or United States, but also East Asia. Okay. Second, driving forces of second modern transformation. So one is risk that we face. That is most important, And we turn to anthropocosmic development, not anthropocentric development. That is a Confucian tradition. Traditional Confucian imagination of the world is anthropocosmic kind of coexistence and development. And it is a time that East Asia should develop more sensitivity, imagination from that perspective. So balance between individual right and community. On the one hand, we need to expand our freedom, but on the other hand, we need to expand also community. So this balance, this normative idea, seems to be very much strong in East Asia. So therefore, we have some hope to look forward our future from a more kind of promising perspective. Thank you very much. I think I will